It's Wednesday again and I have two lessons scheduled. The first one is hour 18 with Davide. The objective is to continue the work we started yesterday to round up my rough edges ahead of a potential solo flight later in the day. Since hour 15, each new flight could lead to my first solo. This morning's flight, hour 18, is perhaps the last one before reaching this important milestone. It's only a day since my last flight and all the issues that Davide discussed with me are still fresh in my mind. On my way to Camden, I revisited all the usual radio calls, BUMFISH, circuit speeds and altitude, etc. and added the ground checklists. Up to now, I neglected practicing those ground items because I considered them easy. Since these items were done on the ground, reading from a checklist, how hard could it be? Still, I was proven wrong. It was easy to miss an item on the list. I was also more keenly aware of the importance of constantly listening to the radio in the air and on the ground. As soon as avionics and headphones are on, anything that comes through the radio is potentially important. Yesterday, it was the change of weather conditions during taxi. In hour 20, which you can learn about later on, it was a self-propelled lawnmower on the runway. The bottom line is that situational awareness happens by looking out the window, scanning the instruments and actively listening to the radio. My plane today was Victor Hotel Julia Bravo Charlie, or simply Julia Bravo Charlie. On the way to the hangar, I saw that Alpha Hotel in the maintenance hangar received its 100-hour treatment. So let's talk a little bit about the 100-hour maintenance on a Cessna 172. So I took advantage of the opportunity to take a few photos of the engine, and you can see them here. I did some research and found that the 100-hour maintenance on a Cessna is a big one. It is equivalent to a 20,000 kilometer of maintenance on a car, but a lot more expensive. The 100-hour maintenance for a Cessna 172 is a thorough inspection required by the FAA or CASA for aircraft used for hire or flight instruction. It's similar to an annual inspection but occurs more frequently. The 100-hour inspection for a Cessna 172 under CASA regulations is a detailed process focusing on the safety and airworthiness of the aircraft. When I was back at Camden on Sunday for a scout activity day, Alpha Hotel was still in the hangar. It had completed the 100-hour maintenance but was waiting for a new set of wingtips and navigation lights, LEDs, as the old ones had developed cracks. In today's flight, one of the exercises I did was to simulate an engine failure. I'd done this exercise a couple of times before with Greg. A simulated engine failure is a training exercise in general aviation where the instructor simulates the loss of engine power, allowing the student to practice the procedures for handling an actual engine failure. This exercise is crucial for developing the pilot's decision-making and emergency handling skills. And this is how the simulation works.
Checking on the speed as well, listening for that.
Sure, Bravo Charlie, request simulator on crosswind.
Bravo Charlie.
Alrighty, taking over your throttle, simulating engine failure.
Oh, damn. Alright.
Charlie Papa Quebec
So
down,
pitch down.
and go. Charlie Papa Quebec, follow the Robin on
It's
final.
68 knots. I'm going to land right there. There's a little,
Charlie Papa Quebec.
Alright,
there's
good.
a little road there.
Charlie Foxtrot, clear to land.
No worries. When you're ready, go around.
Okay, one thing is I didn't manage to get my speed in that amount of time.
That's alright, it's all good. I
But,
can see that you picked
yeah.
a field and you were tracking towards it.
But I
So we'll
wasn't
continue a climbing turn onto downwind.
In this exercise, my task was to aviate the plane, to set the speed to gliding speed, which is 68 knots for the Cessna 172 that I'm flying, and to identify a suitable landing location within 30 degrees to the left or to the right of the nose. Because of my altitude at the time, turning back to the runway would be impossible and I wouldn't attempt it. I've done several flapless approaches in my training and did more in hour 18. Flapless approaches in a Cessna 172 present unique challenges due to the changes in the aircraft performance and handling characteristics when landing without the use of flaps. Understanding these challenges is crucial for safe and effective piloting.
Alright, so this is going to be a flapless approach. So I've got...
Yeah, we've got to maintain that height.
Straight down window 6, maintain 1,800 and report the battery as you expect, Oscar.
Yeah, cool. So we're looking for about 80 knots at this stage, 80 to 85.
So there's 80 knots.
Yeah, whilst maintaining 1,300.
A bit low, but okay.
Alrighty, so we'll start that lookout. We're on our right.
Right. The
center.
The
Got
left.
traffic started on the left.
Yep. With the source on the final. Alright, there's my... Yeah, I use the legs as well. So I'm going to bring down the throttle.
Yep, to 1,300.
1,300, okay.
And start that left-hand turn.
Starting left-hand turn.
Looking for about 80 knots.
Okay, got 80 knots.
Yep, keep that left-hand turn coming. 30 degrees angle bank.
November Whiskey, clear touch and go.
Yep, 30 degrees. Yep, even more.
Okay.
There we go.
Alright, so
Otherwise you'll leave the zone.
Yeah.
Cool.
So its notch is 15 degrees, right?
No,
No.
15 degrees in the climbing turn.
I mean, yeah.
Cool, now we're getting a little bit low. So what we can do is we can add some power, bring it back up to about 1600, and nose it up a little bit to make sure the speed stays constant. Alright. Yep, there we go.
Okay.
Alrighty, now getting ready to turn onto final.
Right, center, left.
Clear all around, let's bring that power back to about 13 and do our left-hand turn.
30 degrees. Well, I'm a
Yep,
bit
cool,
wide.
we're still a little bit wide, a little bit high, so let's bring that power even more,
Bravo Charlie,
up to about
clear touch and
13.
Clear touch and go, Julia Bravo Charlie.
Cool, we have our
go.
clearance.
You need to plug your headset in further, I think. You're very faint, I can hear you in the background like you're talking on a handheld or something.
Yep, cool, bring it back a little bit more.
Take a look at the bottom specs.
Alright, if you start as
80
approved,
knots.
you can report ready this frequency and run it, please.
Start approved, Romeo Whiskey.
That's better.
Check Quebec Oscar is
Okay,
turning
speed is
downwind.
good.
Yeah, speed's a bit high, so
little-
let's
a
bring
little,
that
yeah.
throttle even more, bring it back to idle.
So idle.
Yeah, then keep the attitude the same, let the speed wash off. We want it to be about 75 knots.
75 knots now.
Yep, there we go.
Clear visual approach.
For the speed.
Yeah, speed's washing off, that's good.
06 and touch and go. Check Quebec Oscar.
Let it keep going. Alrighty, power back at idle, keep it at idle. Yep, maintain that center line. Don't nose up too much. Maintain that center line. Now start to flare.
Okay.
A little bit late, that's alright. Alrighty,
Alright,
Full
full
power.
throttle.
Flapless approaches in a Cessna 172 require careful consideration of the altered flight dynamics, higher approach speeds, and different handling characteristics. Pilots must be adept in managing these challenges to ensure a safe and controlled landing. Regular practice and thorough understanding of these factors are key to mastering flapless landings. The weather for this flight was excellent. For this flight, ATIS reported this.
Camden Terminal Information Alpha. Runway 06. Wind calm. Cav OK. Temperature 20. QNH 1019er. On first contact with Camden Tower or ground, notify receipt of information Alpha.
A good flight starts with a good pre-flight inspection and completed checklists. Unlike our 17, I didn't do any major stuff-ups on the ground. One minor omission was that I almost primed the engine with the mixed lean, and it must be rich. Davide pointed this out and I made the mix rich. Startup and taxi were good. The radio calls for circuits, clearance and ready for circuits were also good. Run-up checklist was completed properly and there was no change in weather conditions, and I was actively listening to the radio for that. I used these safety and departure briefings that Davide gave me yesterday, and I think these are written actually by Greg, and you can see them here.
The safety briefing. So I'm looking for a static RPM of 2250 if that's not attained, or if we don't have T's and P's in the green, oil, pressure and temperature might spike. If the airspeed is not alive, if I'm not able to achieve the takeoff speed of 60 knots by halfway through the runway, and if I hear anything weird noise-wise coming from the plane, like unlatched doors or cargo perhaps not secured, I will abort the takeoff. I will apply brakes as needed in order to slow down the plane as quickly as possible.
so how are you going to abort the takeoff? What's
I'm
the
going
order?
to take the trim. Actually, I'm going to use my hands as well to indicate.
Yep,
I'm going to pull out the RPMs to idle and then apply brakes in order to stop the plane as quickly as possible
good.
and exit the runway. In addition, if the engine fails after takeoff with runway remaining, I will close the throttle, lower the nose in order to avoid stalling the plane, and re-land on the remaining runway while maintaining airspeed, and then exit the runway. I may need to backtrack at this point. If the engine fails after takeoff without runway remaining, I will lower the nose, attain gliding speed of 68 knots, and then I will look for a suitable landing spot or landing field within 30 degrees of the plane, right or left. I will not attempt to turn back unless I am at least 1,000 feet AGL, in which case I will attempt, or I will consider the possibility of returning to land if I'm appropriately positioned at that point. And that concludes the safety briefing.
Okay. That was better than last time.
Oh,
That's
much
good.
better. Last time was nothing. All right. Okay, so that's a departure briefing and the safety briefing. Actually, departure briefing we haven't done that, so let's work on that quickly as well.
Yep.
So we'll be departing on runway 06. We're going to do left-hand circuits. We are going to try various exercises with normal circuits or flapless landings, normal landings I should say, flapless landings, and perhaps emergency landings. Risks to be aware of other planes in the circuit. I think there's at least one.
Yeah, we got CPQ in the circuit, and then this guy's departing on crosswind.
All right, so we've got one.
Cool.
There is no glider activity, so that's one less thing to worry about. And the weather is good, like there's 3 knots, perhaps 3.
Well, right now the wind is calm,
That's
so
calm,
the wind is
calm
technically
wind.
0.
Havoc okay, things might change, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
So that's the departure briefing.
Okay.
And
Takeoff was good and we were off for a standard normal circuit. This first circuit was actually not bad. I was able to hold altitude and airspeed reasonably well, except for the final, as you'll see here. Spacing within the runway and heading were also good. And avoid slamming back on the runway. My airspeed was high enough at about 70 knots instead of 65 knots. I should have gone around. I also did not pull back on the control column over the threshold to help the plane slow down by pitching up and allow the main wheels to touch down first. Although this was practically a touch and go, it wasn't well controlled. My decision to apply full throttle and prevent the plane from bouncing again on the runway was good. The second circuit was also a standard approach, i.e. With flaps. I went a bit wide in final, but speed was better controlled. Over the threshold this time, my speed was too slow, 60 knots, and I had the plane pitched up too much. But I did get a better controlled landing. I retracted the plane, pushed full throttle, and took off for circuit 3. I did one more circuit with normal approach, which ended up too high, and I had to do a go around. And then Davide demonstrated how to do this properly in circuit 5. I was back in control for circuit 6 and managed to pull an excellent landing finally. Airspeed over the threshold was exactly 65 knots, and I was actually very happy with that. Circuit 7 was flapless. This means speeds on base, final and over the threshold must be plus 5 knots. However, Davide decided to do an impromptu engine failure simulation. After this, I returned the plane to the circuit and commenced the flapless approach. My biggest challenge with flapless is that I only have pitch to control speed. In this attempt, I was too fast on base, and this caused me to be wide on final. I did manage to get the speed under control just before the threshold. However, I bounced off the runway just like I did in circuit 1 and immediately applied full throttle to take off and prevent a second hard bounce. Back in the circuit for another flapless approach, interlaced with another engine failure simulation. On final, my profile looked okay, but I was distracted by a plane on the runway and a call from tower with too many words in it. The mental effort I needed to deal with managing the approach, processing the plane on the runway and responding to the tower call disorganized my approach, and I decided to go around. I was now in circuit 9. It was a near perfect circuit, at least for my standards, with excellent speed control over the threshold, 75 knots exactly. However, the tower had not given us clearance to land, so we did a go around just before touchdown. Damn it, there was one more thing to keep track of. That's, have I received clearance to land? Without clearance, I either have to check in with tower if there is sufficient time to do this, or just go around. The circuit was getting busy, so circuit 10 would be the last one. This was going to be a regular approach, and I received clearance to land in early final. Aside from being to the left of the center line, it was a good landing. My biggest problem in this morning's flight was speed management. My next flight with Greg would not be a potential solo because I still have things to improve. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on the subscribe button below this video. And of course, you can also head over to my detailed flight training log pages on the Tech Explorations website. In these pages, I document in detail all of my experiences and learnings from each one of my training flights. These logs contain a goldmine of information for any aviation student or anyone interested in aviation. Until next time, I wish you clear skies and safe landings.